Hey everyone, I'm back to read the really long chapter of Matilda about Bruce Bogtrotter. We'll see if I can start the next chapter, but this one's kind of a long one. "There you are, cook," the Trunchbull cried. "Bogtrotter likes your cake. He adores your cake. Do you have any more of your cake you can give him?" "I do indeed," the cook said. She seemed to have learned her lines by heart. "Then go and get it, and bring a knife to cut it with." The cook disappeared. Almost at once she was back again, staggering under the weight of an enormous round chocolate cake on a china platter. The cake was fully 18 inches in diameter, and it was covered with dark brown chocolate icing. "Put it on the table," the Trunchbull said. There was a small table, center stage, with a chair behind it. The cook placed the cake carefully on the table. "Sit down, Bogtrotter," the Trunchbull said. "Sit there." The boy moved cautiously to the table and sat down. He stared at the gigantic cake. "There you are, Bogtrotter," the Trunchbull said. And once again her voice became soft, persuasive, even gentle. "It's all for you, every bit of it. As you enjoyed that slice you had yesterday so very much, I ordered cook to bake you an extra large one, all for yourself." "Well, thank you," the boy said, totally bemused. "Thank cook, not me," the Trunchbull said. "Thank you, cook," the boy said. The cook stood there like a shriveled bootlace, tight-lipped, implacable, disapproving. She looked as though her mouth was full of lemon juice. "Come on then," the Trunchbull said. "Why don't you cut yourself a nice, thick slice and try it?" "What, now?" the boy said, cautious. He knew there was a catch in this somewhere, but he wasn't sure where. "Can't I take it home instead?" he asked. "That would be impolite," the Trunchbull said, with a crafty grin. "You must show Cookie here how grateful you are for all the trouble she's taken." The boy didn't move. "Go on, get on with it," the Trunchbull said. "Cut a slice and taste it. We haven't got all day." The boy picked up the knife and was about to cut into the cake when he stopped. He stared at the cake. Then he looked up at Trunchbull. Then at the tall, stringy cook with her lemon juice mouth. All the children in the hall were watching tensely, waiting for something to happen. They felt certain it must. The Trunchbull was not a person who would give someone a whole chocolate cake to just eat out of kindness. Many were guessing that it had been filled with pepper or castor oil or some other foul-tasting substance that would make the boy violently sick. It might even be arsenic, and he would be dead in 10 seconds flat. Or perhaps it was a booby-trapped cake, and the whole thing would blow up the moment it was cut, taking Bruce Bogtrotter with it. No one in the school put it past the Trunchbull to do any of these things. "I don't want to eat it," the boy said. "Taste it, you little brat," the Trunchbull said. "You're insulting the cook." Very gingerly, the boy began to cut a thin slice of the vast cake. Then he levered the slice out. Then he put down the knife and took the sticky thing in his fingers and started very slowly to eat it. "It's good, isn't it?" the Trunchbull asked. "Very good," the boy said, chewing and swallowing. He finished his slice. "Have another," the Trunchbull said. "That's enough, thank you," the boy murmured. "I said have another," the Trunchbull said, and now there was an altogether sharper edge to her voice. "Eat another slice. Do as you are told." "I don't want another slice," the boy said. Suddenly, the Trunchbull exploded. "Eat!" she shouted, banging her thigh with the riding crop. "If I tell you to eat, you will eat. You wanted cake, you stole cake, and now you've got cake. What's more, you're going to eat it. You do not leave this platform, and nobody leaves this hall until you have eaten the entire cake that is sitting there in front of you. Do I make myself clear, Bogtrotter? Do you get my meaning?" The boy looked at the Trunchbull. Then he looked down at the enormous cake. "Eat! Eat! Eat!" the Trunchbull was yelling. Very slowly the boy cut himself another slice and began to eat it. Matilda was fascinated. "Do you think he can do it?" she whispered to Lavender. No, Lavender whispered back. It's impossible. He'd be sick before he was halfway through. The boy kept going. When he had finished the second slice, he looked at the Trunchbull, hesitating. Eat, she shouted. Greedy little thieves who like to eat cake must have cake. Eat faster, boy, eat faster. We don't want to be here all day. And don't stop like you're doing now. Next time you stop before it's all finished, you'll go straight into the chokey, and I shall lock the door and throw the key down the well. The boy cut a third slice and started to eat it. He finished this one quicker than the other two, and when that was done, he immediately picked up the knife and cut the next slice. In some peculiar way, he seemed to be getting into his stride. Matilda, watching closely, saw no signs of distress in the boy yet. If anything, he seemed to be gathering confidence as he went along. He's doing well, she whispered back to Lavender. He'll be sick soon, Lavender whispered back. It's going to be horrid. When Bruce Bogtrotter had eaten his way through half of the entire enormous cake, he paused for just a couple of seconds and took several deep breaths. The Trunchbull stood with hands on hips, glaring at him. Get on with it, she shouted. Eat it up! Suddenly, the boy let out a gigantic belch, which rolled around the assembly hall like thunder. Many of the audience began to giggle. Silence! Shouted the Trunchbull. The boy cut himself another thick slice and started eating it fast. There were still no signs of flagging or giving up. He certainly did not look as though he was about to stop and cry out, I can't eat anymore, I'm going to be sick. He was still in there running. And now a subtle change was coming over the 250 watching children in the audience. Early on, they had sensed impending disaster. They had prepared themselves for an unpleasant scene in which the wretched boy, stuffed to the gills with chocolate cake, would have no surrender and beg for mercy, and then they would have watched the triumphant Trunchbull forcing more and still more cake into the mouth of the gasping boy. Not a bit of it. Bruce Bogtrotter was 3/4 of the way through and still going strong. One sensed that he was almost beginning to enjoy himself. He had a mountain to climb, and he was jolly well going to reach the top or die in the attempt. What's more, he had now become very conscious of his audience, and how they were all silently rooting for him. This was nothing less than a battle between him and the mighty Trunchbull. Suddenly, someone shouted, Come on, Bruce, you can make it! The Trunchbull wheeled around and yelled, Silence! The audience watched intently. They were thoroughly caught up in the contest. They were longing to start cheering, but they didn't dare. I think he's going to make it, Matilda whispered. I think so too, Lavender whispered back. I wouldn't have believed anyone in the world could eat a whole cake of that size. The Trunchbull doesn't believe it either, Matilda whispered. Look at her. She's turning redder and redder. She's going to kill him if she wins. The boy was slowing down now. There was no doubt about that, but he kept pushing the stuff into his mouth with the dogged perseverance of a long-distance runner who has sighted the finish line and knows he must keep going. As the very last mouthful disappeared, a tremendous cheer rose up from the audience, and children were leaping onto their chairs and yelling and clapping and shouting, Well done, Bruce! Good for you, Brucey! You won a gold medal, Brucey! The Trunchbull stood motionless on the platform. Her great horsey face had turned the color of molten lava, and her eyes were glittering with fury. She glared at Bruce Bogtrotter, who was sitting on his chair like some huge overstuffed grub, replete, comatose, unable to move or speak. A fine sweat was beading on his forehead, but there was a grin of triumph on his face. Suddenly, the Trunchbull lunged forward and grabbed the large, empty china platter on which the cake had rested. She raised it high in the air and brought it down with a crash right on top of the wretched Bruce Bogtrotter's head, and pieces flew all over the platform. The boy was by now so full of cake, he was like a sack full of wet cement, and you couldn't have hurt him with a sledgehammer. He simply shook his head a few times and went on grinning. Go to blazes! Screamed the Trunchbull, and she marched off the platform, followed closely by the cook. if you guys end up watching the movie Matilda, the Bruce Bogtrotter scene is one of the best ones in the movie. And there's more to come. The next chapter is all about Lavender, so it's going to talk about her character a little bit more, and Miss Honey and Matilda. And I'll read that to you on Friday. Have a good day.